Good morning, good morning. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Church at Delaware County, and please rise as you're as willing and able to sing our opening hymn, Answering the Call of Love, 1014. Very nice. Thank you, Bob. And I'd like to invite the Watson family to come up and light our chalice this morning. Good morning. And now let's recite our covenant. Enriched by our differences and joined together in our search for meaning, we covenant with ourselves and each other to seek fruit in the spirit of love, to strive for justice, and to serve others with a joyful heart. Thank you so much. Now let's take a minute and welcome your neighbors, okay? Good morning, good morning, good morning. Thank you, Bob, for trying to keep it under control. I'm Joe Miller, and it's my privilege this morning to lead our worship with our Director of Religious Education, Chrissy Bushyager, and John Davies, who will be offering a reading and sermon. If you don't know John, he and his family have been here for some 10 years now at our church. leading our social justice ministry team. And he's a historian and teaches at several of our local universities. So this morning he'll be sharing his insights on how Unitarian Universalists have confronted evil and injustice. Now, a couple announcements. About 10 minutes after this service, we're going to have a town hall led by Reverend Ed to get feedback on the proposed bylaws. This is important because we hope these bylaws will be voted on at our January 28th congregational meeting. A lot of work's gone into them. There's been a lot of these town halls, as well as they've been posted out on our website, and so they're important, and I ask you to pay attention to them. And if you have any last-minute questions or things like that around this, please attend this town hall today. January 20th, the biggest party of the church year is happening, the Chili Chocolate Homebrew Challenge. All right, all right, everybody in there, huh? So I'm just finishing up with my brewing my beer, and I hope to defeat my nemesis, Derek Schweitzer, this year, who seems to always win. He does a great job at it. You know, it's not just for adults, though. Kids can participate. You can't participate in the beer part of it, okay? But you can, if you have a great recipe for chocolate cookies or chocolate cake or whatever, there is a category for children that you can participate in. And I encourage you to do so. But if you want to, you know, do chili or chocolate or homebrew, you do have to register on the website. And it's available. Go out there and register what you're going to do, and we're going to have really, really a great time. Next Sunday is our Social Justice Sunday, and in addition to a wonderful service that we're going to have, we'll be collecting new and slightly used coats and sweaters. There's a big box out here today, I see, and these are for distribution for free at the clothing closet in Media. And now, as we settle into worship, I want to offer an opening prayer. I hope everybody had a good holiday. I had a great holiday. And the last service I was at, or 2 services ago, was during our pageant. I had a chance to sit next to a cow, and that was a lot of fun. But you know, in the Christian tradition, January 6th, yesterday, is the Feast of the Epiphany, commemorating the arrival of the 3 kings, wise men, in Bethlehem, where they visited and brought gifts to the baby Jesus. It was a long and arduous journey, and as the story goes, fueled by the hope of finding a new beginning. Now, this morning's opening prayer is from our Christian friends in the Lutheran Church, women's group in Lutheran Church. And it goes like this: May we each day open the window of our worlds, inviting the fresh light of Epiphany to flood us with hope, to bring us fresh insight, and to fill us with grateful joy. May we see the world around us with new creation eyes, filled with potential and brimming with promise. May our lives be a continuous unfolding. So may it be. Bob, centering song.
I breathe
now is a time that we bring the joys and concerns that we carry during the week here to our congregation. And sometimes I think, and sometimes it even happens to me, I think, what is it's really a joy or a concern that weighs on me that I need to bring today? Sometimes I think we need to kind of loosen it up a little bit. And today, you know, one way, if I imagine that there might be one, two, several children this morning who might have a sorrow that we didn't get a snowstorm yesterday. Right? And there might also be a parent of that child who actually has a joy that we didn't get a snowstorm yesterday. They're going to be able to make it to work on time. But whatever your joy or concern is, be it enormous or something simple like getting off of church, you know, and school, you're welcome to bring it forward and place a stone in the bowl. I place a final 2 stones for those who are not with us here this morning and those who are joining us via Zoom. Please remain seated as we sing Spirit of Life.
Good morning. So our story today is a Jataka tale that is a tale from Buddhist history. And it goes like this. So on the edge of a village, outside of, you can't hear me. Oh no, is that true? You can't hear me? Oh, it's too low. Folks in the booth, oh, that sounds better. Okay, all right. I will start over. So, our story today is a Jataka tale. It comes from Buddhist history, and it goes like this. So, on the edge of a village in Japan, there was a Buddhist temple, and at their temple, there was a school where boys, and yes, at that time, long ago, it was just boys, would come and learn about Buddhism. And they would come and be taught by a teacher, a wise old man, an old monk, who would teach them the ways and the stories and the teachings of Buddhism. He was a wonderful teacher, and the boys loved him. Now, the temple was growing old, and it was starting to kind of fall into disrepair. The walls needed painted. The gate on the garden the latch had kind of broken. It didn't lock anymore. The wall around the garden, the stones were falling out of the wall. They needed to kind of be fixed. So there were a lot of upkeep that needed to be done at this temple. So the teacher, the monk, decided he would teach a lesson to his students. He would do not just a lesson, but a little bit of a test. So he gathered his students together, and he said, boys, today I want to talk to you about something. You know that our temple is growing old. It is starting to fall apart a little bit. You know that I, too, am growing old, and I fear that I haven't taught you a very important lesson. I haven't taught you how to go out and earn your own money yet. I haven't done that. And we don't have enough money to maintain our temple. We don't have enough money to repair our temple. And at this point, I can only think of one way that we can keep the lights on, keep our temple going, keep ourselves fed. And this is the only way I can come up with. I don't know if you've noticed, but there are many rich people in our village. Have you noticed that there are many rich people in our village? And the boys nodded because they had noticed that. They could tell that there were rich people in the village. They could tell because the rich people had clothes that had gold thread woven through the fabric. They could tell because the rich people wore hats that had feathers on them. They could tell because the rich people carried purses that were filled with gold coins. And the purses looked heavier than other people's purses. Back then, men and women both carried purses, and they looked heavy if they had lots of gold. And the teacher said, now I want you to look for the rich people, the people with the heaviest purses. Those people have more money than they need. They have plenty to share. I want you to follow those rich people. Find one who is all by themselves. And if no one is watching, and only if no one is watching, I want you to steal their purse. Now, the boys were shocked. They were very surprised. And one of the boys said, but teacher, didn't you tell us we should never, ever take something that doesn't belong to us? And the teacher said, well, yeah, sure, yeah, I did. But now now you have to listen very carefully to what I'm telling you. I told you only if no one is watching should you steal the purse. Only if no one is watching. When should they steal the purse? No one is watching. Right. And so he said, okay, now go. Out. And he shooed them out of the room. And the boys went out, except for one boy who was standing, kind of hiding in the corner. And the monk stood at the door, shooed the boys out, and turned around, and there was this boy standing in the corner. And the monk said, why have you not left? Why have you not gone off with the other boys to go steal purses and save our temple? And the boy said, well, teacher, I can't do it. It is an impossible task. And the teacher said, well, why can't you do this? And the boy said, well, there is no way in heaven or earth that I could steal without someone watching. Because I would always be watching myself. I would always see myself, and I would see myself stealing, and I cannot do that. And the teacher said, yes, that is the lesson I wanted you to learn. Now run and go find your friends and bring them back before they get in trouble. And the boy went running, and he didn't have to run far because all the other boys were just beyond the garden gate, huddled in a tight circle, trying to figure out how they could possibly do this and not upset their teacher, knowing that it was wrong for them to steal. So he brought the other boys back. No one had done anything bad. And the teacher explained to them that, yes, of course, it was not right for them to steal. And he said, there is always inside of you a voice telling you the right thing to do. You just need to listen to that quiet voice. Thank you for listening to my story today.
This service today is our first service of 2024, and I'm filled with gratitude for you and our congregation who are here today, Reverend Ed and Chrissy, Director of Religious Education, for the folks that make our service run. And I'm also grateful for your financial contributions, which allow our church to continue and thrive. Now's our time to give. Please be generous, and your gifts will be received with gratitude.
I have a voice, started out as a whisper, turned into a scream, made a beautiful noise, shoulder to shoulder marching in the street. But when you're all alone, it's a quiet breeze. When you band together, it's a choir of thunder and rain. Now we have a choice, 'cause I have a voice. I'm not living to die. Don't stand in a wasteland, look me in the eye. Stop living a lie and stand up next to me. You've got to put one foot in front of the other, with a hand in a hand, holding on to each other. Go on and rejoice, 'cause you have a voice. It is loud, it is clear, it is stronger than your fear. It's believing you belong, it's for calling out the wrong. From the silence of my sisters to the violence of my brother, we can rage against the river, feel the pain of another. I have a voice, I have a voice, and I let it speak for the ones who aren't yet really free. It's killing me, no one's saying what we need to hear. I will not let silence win when I see all the pain our people are in. There's no other choice, 'cause I have a voice. It is loud, it is clear, it is stronger than your fear. It's believing you belong, it's for calling out the wrong. From the mouths of our mothers to the lips of our daughters, we can dream like our brothers, speaking loud like our fathers. We can heal. Can you hear us? Can you hear us now? I have a voice, started out as a whisper, turned into a scream, made a beautiful noise, shoulder to shoulder marching in the street. When you're all alone, it's a quiet breeze, but when you band together, it's a choir of thunder and rain. Now we have a choice, 'cause I have a voice. Now we have a choice, 'cause I have a voice. Now we have a choice, 'cause I have a voice.
Thank you, Gabby. Now is the time in our service when our children are invited to go to their religious education classes. I've seen a couple visitors today, so I just want to review that all children are invited, preschool through 6th grade at this time, are invited to religious education classes. If you are new to UUCDC and your child wants to stay in the sanctuary with you, that is also totally okay. So pick up from religious education is at 10:45 in the classroom. We will sing our sending song 3 times. We sing it together the first time, the second time through, our teachers go out into the lobby to meet their students, and then the third time through, the children go out.
Today's reading is titled Life Goes On by Howard Thurman. It was first published in January of 1953, and it was found in the collection Meditations of the Heart, which is published by Beacon Press. Go to UUA website and you can buy a copy. Howard Thurman was a minister, a theologian, a mystic. He was not a Unitarian Universalist, but we like to think he is. During these turbulent times, we must remind ourselves repeatedly that life goes on. This we are apt to forget. The wisdom of life transcends our wisdoms. The purpose of life outlasts our purposes. The process of life cushions our processes. The mass attack of disillusion and despair, distilled out of the collapse of hope, has so invaded our thoughts that what we know to be true and valid seems unreal and ephemeral. There seems to be little energy left for aught but futility, and this is the great deception. By it, whole peoples have gone down to oblivion without the will to affirm the great and permanent strength of the clean and commonplace. Let us not be deceived. It is just as important as ever to attend to the little graces by which the dignity of our lives is maintained and sustained. Birds still sing. The stars continue to cast their gentle gleam over the desolation of the battlefields, and the heart is still inspired by the kind word and the gracious deed. There is no need to fear evil. There is every need to understand what it does, how it operates in the world, what it draws upon to maintain itself. We must not shrink from the knowledge of the evilness of evil. Over and over again, we must know that the real target of evil is not destruction of the body, the reduction to rubble of cities. The real target of evil is to corrupt the spirit of man and to give his soul the contagion of inner disintegration. When this happens, there is nothing left. The very citadel of man is captured and laid waste. Therefore, the evil in the world around us must not be allowed to move without to within. This would be to be overcome by evil. To drink in the beauty that is within reach, to clothe one's life with simple deeds of kindness, to keep alive as sensitive to the movement of the Spirit of God, this is, as always, the ultimate answer to the great deception.
I just have to say, this song that I'm going to sing is a Phil Oakes song. It's 60 years old, and it's still relevant. All around this country, trouble in the air, and I hear the voices calling me, asking, do you know and do you care? Asking, do you know and do you care? So I'm gonna do what I have to do, say what I have to say. I'm gonna be what I have to be. Now won't you come on along with me? Won't you come along with me? Don't wanna cause no sorrow, don't wanna cause no pain. Oh, I'm only gonna cause what I have to cause until this land is free of shame, until this land is free of shame. Oh, I'm gonna do what I have to do, say what I have to say. I'm gonna be what I have to be. Now won't you come on along with me? Won't you come along with me? Only I know we're not alone. Was a million here before we came. Be a million when we're gone. Be a million here when we're gone. So I'm gonna do what I have to do. Say what I have to say. I'm gonna be what I have to be. Now won't you come on along with me? Won't you come along with me? Oh, I'm afraid of trouble. I'm afraid of jail. But I'm more afraid, Lord, not to try. More afraid what happens now if we fail. More afraid what happens if we fail. So I'm gonna do what I have to do. Say what I have to say. I'm gonna be what I have to be. Now won't you come on along with me? Won't you come along with me? Now won't you come on along with me? Won't you come along with me?
Amen.
Tough act to follow. Thank you, Gabby, for your gift of song. And I want to thank everyone who has helped make this service possible, and of course you for being here. As you may know, writing the words to a sermon no one will hear is a sad thing. As Unitarian Universalists, we are called on to acknowledge the inherent worth and dignity of every person, promote justice, equity, and compassion in human relations, participate in a free and responsible search for truth and meaning, respect and make use of the democratic process, and work toward building a diverse, multicultural, beloved community by our actions. I know that's only 5 of the 8 principles, but work with me here. The proposed revisions to Article 2 of the UU bylaws and rules reframe these principles, calling on us to transform the world through liberating love. Expressing our values and principles, no matter how we phrase them, is one thing, but can be difficult to do even in ordinary circumstances. So how do we live out our values and principles in extraordinary times when they are threatened and openly attacked? In asking this, I am thinking about and will be talking about the attack on the U.S. Capitol that took place 3 years ago yesterday. This attack is rooted in what can be seen as the opposite of liberating love: fear, hate, indifference, and evil. Feelings and expressions of fear and hate, aided by indifference to the inhumanity of others, can often result in acts of evil. Evil, fear, hate, indifference. Each of these have been met with resistance in thought and deed by Unitarian Universalists acting in commitment to our values and principles. Reflecting on the history of how Unitarian Universalists have expressed their commitment to their faith may provide additional fire to fuel our commitment to demonstrating love and seeking justice. Now, while I will comment on the events of January 6th, the people who were involved in it, and their motivations, I have more to say about how, in the 20th century, UUs who, emboldened by faith, dared to proclaim they were answering the call of love. I'll focus on the actions of Martha Dickey Sharp and her husband, Waitstill Sharp, during World War II, and those of the Reverend James Reeb and Viola Liuzzo in 1960s Alabama. And my notes are all out of order. Well, it's just as well because it was my overview of January 6th. As we all know, you may remember where you were on January 6th. You may have been, like me, in front of your television as we watched and heard about the rallies taking place outside of the White House, as we heard about protesters marching to the Capitol, engaging in conflict, attacking the police there, breaking their way into the building, you may have watched with dread, an increasing sense of dread, as those rioters made their way into the Capitol, threatening lawmakers, vandalizing the halls of that building, ransacking offices, and even trying to breach the chamber where congressmen were in hiding. In those efforts, one of the rioters, Ashley Babbitt, was killed. For hours, this went on, and it wasn't until about 6 p.m. that the Capitol was declared to be cleared. And it wasn't until 8 p.m. that it was, business was allowed to resume. The Senate and the House of Representatives, which were supposed to have been meeting in joint session, went about their business, overruling objections to the vote counts in Arizona and in Pennsylvania. And sometime in the night, the House and Senate rejoined in joint session. By about 4 o'clock in the morning, 3:42 I think it was, then Vice President Mike Pence declared that the electoral count had shown that Joe Biden had won the election. Now, the people that were involved in the events of January 6th come from a variety of backgrounds, a variety of experiences, but we do know that people aligned with organized militias, like the Oath Keepers, the 3%ers, they were present, they were there. They were dressed in their camouflage, they had weapons and other gear like zip ties. They made their way through the House and Senate chambers trying to find people. Then and now, many of these groups pursued an anti-government, anti-Semitic, and white supremacist agenda. Anti-Semitism is woven into both their white supremacist outlook and their concern with the so-called New World Order. Similarly, and perhaps obviously, their white supremacism was grounded in anti-Black racism, justified on religious and pseudo-scientific grounds. The connections of groups like the Oath Keepers, like the 3%ers, date back to the 1980s and the rise of the militia movement in the 1990s. Political violence and extremism rooted in fear, hate, prejudice, and injustice are both an American problem and a global problem. Throughout their history, Unitarians, Universalists, and Unitarian Universalists have challenged such violence and hatred. Out of many examples, we could seriously be here all day. I'd like to focus on two: the efforts of Martha and Reverend Waitstill Sharp to rescue those facing Nazi persecution during World War II, and Unitarian Universalists who died as a result of their participation in the Selma to Montgomery marches of 1965. The lives and actions of Martha and Waitstill Sharp are one example of resisting evil and injustice in the face of dangerous oppression. Now, a couple years ago, Chrissy discussed the Sharps at a time for all ages, and with her permission, seriously, I have her permission, I'll be borrowing from her version of that story. The Sharps lived in Massachusetts. As I said, Waitstill Sharp was a minister, and their lives changed dramatically in 1938 when Germany annexed part of Czechoslovakia. Those escaping Nazi rule sought refuge in independent Czechoslovakia. They needed food, shelter, and for some, a way out of the region. The American Unitarian Association, or the AUA, asked the Sharps to lead relief efforts in Czechoslovakia, and they did so in 1939, leaving their 2 children behind in the United States. On their way through Europe, the Sharps set up a network of volunteers who get visas and travel documents, employment, and safe passage for refugees. The Sharps arrived in Prague in February of 1939 and immediately got to work. They helped people get out of the country, they distributed food and medicine to refugees, and through the AUA, they provided financial support to Czech institutions that were also assisting refugees. Now, the German army invaded Czechoslovakia and occupied Prague on March 15, 1939. Still, the Sharps continued to do their work as best they could, with Martha focusing on helping refugees escape and Waitstill continuing the relief efforts. Between March and August, Martha made 6 trips taking refugees out of Czechoslovakia. But the Sharps found themselves under increasing pressure from the Nazis. They were thrown out of their offices in April, and after finding new workspaces in student housing, they were forced out when that closed in late July. They ended up leaving Prague in August. Having gone to Switzerland for a conference, Waitstill was not allowed to re-enter Czechoslovakia. Then, under threat of imminent arrest by the Gestapo, Martha fled Czechoslovakia on August 15th. The Sharps reunited in Paris and sailed for home. But the next year, 1940, the Sharps returned to Europe on behalf of the newly formed Unitarian Service Committee, USC. That's the forerunner of today's Unitarian Universalist Service Committee. The Sharps were sent to Lisbon, Portugal. As in Prague, Waitstill and Martha split responsibilities, with Waitstill working on relief projects in Lisbon and Martha working in southern France to distribute 12 tons of milk and other dairy products and to help refugee children get out of Europe. If you've watched the Netflix series Transatlantic, Waitstill Sharp worked with Varian Fry and the Emergency Rescue Committee, or the ERC. Now, if you haven't watched the series, the ERC worked to help intellectuals and professionals escape Europe. And the USC represented the ERC's interests in Lisbon. One of the intellectuals that the ERC and USC helped rescue was Jewish novelist Leon Feuchtwanger, whom the Germans were trying to arrest. In making arrangements to get Feuchtwanger and his wife out, Martha gave up her own ticket so that they could sail, the husband and wife could sail to New York with Waitstill. Meanwhile, Martha continued her mission to get over 24 children and roughly 10 adults out of unoccupied France, Vichy France. They had to go out of France, through Spain, into Portugal, and then to the United States. As the Harvard Square Library puts it, the children needed medical certificates, vaccinations, photos, and affidavits from representatives and financial guarantors. The governments of 4 countries required documents allowing entry into, exit from, and passage through their borders. Now, as you can imagine, the process took a long time, 12 weeks, but Martha was successful. The refugees made their way to Lisbon, and in December of 1940, Martha and a small group of refugees sailed to New York. They greeted the remaining children and adults later that month. This was the first transport of its kind, and Martha's work became the model for the evacuation of children during the war. Now, through the rest of the war, whether in the United States or elsewhere, Martha and Waitstill continued their humanitarian work, but they did so separately. Then, tired by indifferent treatment by the USC leadership on the basis of her gender, Martha quit the USC in December of 1945. Further, having grown apart under the stress of wartime separation and diverging areas of humanitarian interest, the Sharps divorced in 1954. Waitstill Sharp died in 1983, Martha in 1999. For their work in rescuing European Jews, they were posthumously honored by Yad Vashem, Israel's memorial to the victims of the Holocaust, in 2005. And through their work, the Sharps lived out their faith and were true to themselves. And in doing so, they recognized and challenged evil. My second example of Unitarian Universalist responses to political violence and extremism rooted in fear, hate, prejudice, and injustice brings us to another anti-democratic regime, the American South in the second half of the 20th century. Jim Crow, the systems of economic discrimination, segregation, and disfranchisement targeting blacks in the South had been in place since the early 1900s. Now, at this time, Unitarians and Universalists seem to be ambivalent on the issue of race. Now, there were a few Black Universalists and Unitarian ministers and seminary graduates, but they often have difficulty being placed into churches. But by the 1950s, individual congregations were desegregating, and Unitarian and Universalist organizations were working in Black communities and were publicly involved in desegregation efforts in both the North and the South. The Reverend Gordon D. Gibson, a historian of Unitarian Universalism in the Southern Civil Rights Movement, has described the role that some UUs played in the campaign to end Jim Crow, while emphasizing the fact that it was a Black-inspired, Black-organized, and Black-led movement. Gibson tells us that while a few Universalist churches existed in the South before World War II, Unitarian churches only began to be established there after the war. As Gibson phrased it, the dominant values of this religious movement were, to put it mildly, in conflict with the dominant values of the region. Gibson argues that in the face of this conflict, Southern UUs had to, and this is a quote, learn how to live in some degree of tension between their core beliefs on the one hand and, on the other hand, the beliefs and practices deemed acceptable by Southern society. Gibson described the efforts of UU congregations and individuals during this time as small acts of courage. These small acts included simply being present and promoting Unitarian Universalist values in a society that was antithetical to them. And for that, throughout the South, ministers were threatened, they were shot, they were ostracized, and other UUs died assisting in the fight for civil rights. In one particularly bloody month for the civil rights movement, March of 1965, James Reeb and Viola Liuzzo were killed in separate incidents in or near Selma, Alabama. Both had traveled to Selma to participate in a march to the state capital, Montgomery, to protest the death of local civil rights leader Jimmy Lee Jackson. The first march began and ended on March 7th, when Alabama state troopers and a posse brutally attacked the marchers on the Pettus Bridge leading out of Selma. Reeb, a UU minister from Boston, had participated in the second attempted march to Montgomery on March 9th, which was also cut short, this time in response to a federal injunction. That night, Reeb and two other UU ministers were attacked by a group of men in Selma. Reeb was clubbed, suffering internal injuries. Unable to receive proper medical attention, Reeb died on March 11th. Now, Viola Liuzzo was also in Selma. She had driven from Detroit, Michigan to Selma in time to join the third march to Montgomery. The marchers left Selma on March 21st under federal supervision and successfully reached Montgomery on March 24th. The next day, Liuzzo, who was white, and a Black civil rights worker named Leroy Moten had driven 5 marchers back to Selma and then headed back to Montgomery, where Moten lived. In 3 separate incidents, they were chased and harassed along the way by white drivers. The third car pursued Liuzzo and Moten for 20 miles before shooting and killing Liuzzo. After the car drove out of control and crashed into a ditch, Moten had to pretend that he was dead. Afterwards, he was able to draw the attention of another civil rights activist driving down the road who was also taking people back to Selma. Now, where Reeb had long been a Unitarian Universalist and had traveled to act on his principles and his faith's values, Liuzzo's experiences as a child, her close relationship with a Black co-worker, Sarah Evans, and her activities with the NAACP and other groups to address civil rights issues in Detroit, most likely were what drew her to Unitarian Universalism in 1964. Liuzzo had been a UU for a year before her death. And as Sarah Evans said of her, Viola Liuzzo lived a life that combined the care of her family and her home with a concern for the world around her. This involvement with her times was not always understood by her friends, nor was it appreciated by those around her. The Sharps, Reeb, and Liuzzo are just 3 examples of many that illustrate how Unitarian Universalist values can serve as a model for living one's life with integrity, who work with one another to make a beautiful noise in the fight against hatred and fear, and to choose to be courageous in demanding a deeper justice for our world. Now, to return where we started, Unitarian Universalists were quick to respond to the events of January 6th. While some ministers went on with their previously prepared sermons on January 10th, they acknowledged the severity of the event, reflected on its significance. Other ministers took on the topic directly, whether in impromptu sermons or else through messages to their congregations. In a letter to her congregation, Reverend Jen Grayson, then interim minister of the Tree of Life Unitarian Universalist congregation in McHenry, Illinois, wrote, "Our principles ask us to work toward a community of justice, peace, and liberty for all." Stressing the importance of free and open elections, she went on to say, "In this country, the most vital way for everyone to have their voice heard is during an election. This assault on our democratic process has been painful and frightening. And it can be a reminder that we must not turn away or miss this important opportunity to be heard and to ensure others have a voice as well." Now, we may not live in Nazi Germany or the Jim Crow South, but the events of January 6th make it clear that UU values and principles, ideas that can be expressed as simply as everyone matters, everyone deserves a fair chance, everyone must be free to search for what is right or true in life, everyone needs to be heard, and everyone should be free. These simple messages are under attack. But with those principles guiding us through the examples of the past and through the use of our time, talent, and treasure, we can make a better world. Unitarian Universalists have risked their lives and their livelihoods in fighting fear, hate, and indifference, and in confronting evil. May we take inspiration from them, and in whatever way we can, work to ensure that, as the hymn goes, faith, hope, and love abide.
Please rise as you are willing and able. Sing our closing hymn, "The Fire of Commitment."
When
appropriate is that, huh? John, I want to thank you so much for great, informing us of those Unitarian Universalists who've carried that torch and provide us as great examples. I want to thank Gabby for the great music this morning, Bob, your music, the AV team, the hospitality team, and I want to thank everyone here for coming. Now, John, if you'll extinguish our chalice as we recite our benediction. For those who come here seeking God, may God go with you. For those who come embracing life, may life return your affections. For those who come to seek a path, may we be found in the courage to take it step by step. Blessed be.